Welcome to the Cybertruck unveil. We created an exoskeleton.
Could the future be built on broken promises? Two explosive stories unfolding right now are forcing us to ask just that. One involves a machine straight out of a sci-fi film, hailed as the next leap in transportation, now facing recalls, halted, production, and a wave of furious customers. The other, a multi-billion-dollar scandal ripping through one of America's most trusted international institutions, exposing alleged fraud and raising chilling questions about where vital aid money actually went. Forget everything you thought you knew about innovation and integrity. We're about to reveal the hidden failures, the jaw-dropping details, and what happens when grand visions shatter against a harsh reality. Remember the unveil? A stainless steel behemoth rolling onto stage, looking like nothing else on the road. That was the Cybertruck in 2019. It wasn't just a new vehicle, it was a statement, a vision of an armored car of the future. Elon Musk promised a revolutionary pickup. Powerful, long-range, surprisingly affordable, and built with virtually indestructible ultra-hard stainless steel, famously shown shrugging off a 9mm bullet, though maybe not a thrown metal ball. The hype exploded. Millions of people rushed to put down deposits, desperate to own a piece of this audacious future. This machine was set to dominate the electric vehicle conversation, leaving traditional trucks in the dust. It felt like a done deal, but taking that futuristic concept from a stage in California to actual driveways proved to be a living nightmare. The heart of the problem wasn't a futuristic tech glitch, it was the very material meant to make it unique. That ultra-hard 30x cold-rolled stainless steel. While incredibly strong and corrosion-resistant, it was also notoriously difficult to manipulate. Standard automotive manufacturing simply wasn't equipped for it. This wasn't just a minor adjustment, it demanded a complete overhaul of Tesla's production lines. Robots needed extensive reprogramming, existing equipment had to be radically redesigned, and even the most basic assembly procedures were thrown out the window. What seemed like an interesting engineering puzzle on paper became a source of unforeseen delays, ballooning costs, and immense manufacturing headaches. Sources familiar with the factory floor whispered of welding woes and panel fitting fiascos. From day one, and those manufacturing struggles immediately translated into a shocking lack of quality in the first trucks that finally rolled off the line in late 2023. The initial excitement of early adopters quickly soured. Social media, initially buzzing with celebratory photos, soon filled with complaints. Owners reported glaring issues that went far beyond cosmetic flaws. We're talking body panels that didn't align, noticeable gaps where doors met the frame, and trim pieces that were either loose or poorly fitted. These weren't just visual annoyances. They impacted basic things like weather sealing and how the truck held up to normal use. It began to feel less like a precision-engineered machine and more like a rushed prototype. Stepping inside didn't offer much relief. True to Tesla's minimalist design, almost all physical controls were gone, replaced by a single massive touchscreen that managed everything from adjusting mirrors to controlling air vents. While it looked sleek, drivers quickly discovered the frustrating reality. Simple tasks required navigating complex digital menus, a distracting and frankly unsafe activity, especially while the vehicle was in motion. Basic functions that took a second with a physical button now demanded several taps and swipes. Beyond controls, the interior materials themselves felt cold and industrial to many, a far cry from the premium feel expected for a vehicle in this price range. Weather sealing issues meant unexpected cabin noise and even leaks in some units. The polished future felt decidedly unfinished. Then came the issues that couldn't be dismissed as subjective taste. The Cybertruck's enormous flat windscreen required a unique, equally massive single wiper blade. Early reports and tests revealed it was spectacularly ineffective, leaving huge streaks, failing to clean corners, and struggling in moderate rain. This wasn't a minor inconvenience. It was a major functional flaw for a vehicle supposedly built for any condition. The keyless entry system, a standard feature on other Teslas, also proved unreliable, with owners reporting being unexpectedly locked out of their trucks. Camera systems crucial for driver assistance features sometimes glitched or failed entirely. For a vehicle positioned as the vanguard of automotive technology, these basic malfunctions were nothing short of alarming. Perhaps the most ironic failure centered on the truck's main selling point, Its touted durability, the stainless steel, skin promoted as nearly indestructible, came with a surprising set of drawbacks. While resistant to some dents, owners quickly found it was a magnet for fingerprints and water spots, requiring constant, painstaking cleaning to maintain its look. Worse, if the steel was scratched or damaged, repairs were incredibly difficult and costly. Most traditional body shops couldn't work with the material, leaving owners with limited options and excruciatingly long wait times at overwhelmed Tesla service centers. The dream of a low-maintenance, bulletproof facade morphed into a reality of constant upkeep and repair anxiety. The mounting complaints weren't just from isolated incidents, they became a chorus of criticism from industry experts, journalists, and influencers who reported the same pattern: inconsistent build quality, questionable design choices, and a profound lack of polish for a vehicle costing over $80,000. Tesla initially tried to address issues with over-the-air software updates, their usual fix for Model 3 or Y problems. But software can't fix a misaligned panel, a faulty wiper mechanism, or adhesive that doesn't hold. Physical problems require physical solutions, which meant service center visits. As flaws continued to surface, the situation became impossible to ignore, culminating in a series of recalls that hammered the truck's reputation. Weeks before a major planned announcement in early 2025, Tesla issued a recall for approximately 4,000 Cybertrucks. The reason? A dangerous fault where the accelerator pedal could become stuck in the down position, risking sudden and unwanted acceleration. For a vehicle as powerful and heavy as the Cybertruck, this posed a severe safety hazard, forcing regulatory agencies to take immediate notice. But the true shockwave hit shortly after, in March 2025. Tesla announced an unprecedented recall affecting all Cybertrucks delivered up to that point, over 46,000 units. The stunning reason? A piece of exterior trim around the roof was coming loose. In some alarming cases, this trim was detaching completely while the trucks were in motion, especially at highway speeds, creating potential road hazards for other drivers. Investigations traced the issue to faulty adhesive, whether it was a cost-cutting measure, poor quality control, or an unproven bonding process. It was clear the material simply wasn't up to the job. Unlike software issues, this trim defect necessitated a physical fix. Every single affected Cybertruck had to be brought into a service center. This created massive backlogs, long wait times, and overwhelmed service teams often still grappling with how to service this complex new vehicle. The recalls, combined with persistent production issues, forced Tesla to take a dramatic step. Production came to a screeching halt. Deliveries of new trucks were frozen, and work stopped on unfinished units at the Austin factory. While formal statements were limited, sources inside the company hinted that the issues ran far deeper than just the trim adhesive. Engineers were reportedly struggling with a cascade of quality control hurdles and keeping the assembly process functional at all. The scale of the problem was underscored by another revelation. Thousands of Cybertrucks were sitting idle, unfinished, recalled, or awaiting extensive rework. This wasn't just a logistical headache, it was a significant financial burden. With each truck costing a substantial amount to produce and retailing for upwards of $80,000, the total value of these impounded vehicles was estimated to be around $200 million. This represented a major setback for a company that prides itself on lean manufacturing and rapid delivery. Analysts and shareholders began openly questioning whether the decision to pursue such a radical design had been a strategic blunder. Meanwhile, competitors like Ford and Rivian, offering more conventional but reliable electric trucks, watched closely, benefiting from the Cybertruck's turmoil. Inside Tesla, efforts to correct the course were already underway. Engineers were thrown back into redesigning production processes, now with a painful understanding of the Cybertruck's unique demands. That ultra-hard steel, the defining feature, required entirely new methods for bending, welding, and cutting, necessitating expensive retooling and reprogramming of advanced robotic systems. It was a costly lesson in materials science meeting mass production. Beyond fixing the notorious trim adhesive, teams were addressing other known issues. The problematic giant wiper blade was reportedly being redesigned, exploring alternative systems to clear the vast windscreen effectively. Software updates continued, but the focus shifted to making the frustrating in-car controls more user-friendly and intuitive. However, these necessary fixes meant customers who had waited years were facing even longer delays for service appointments and hardware corrections. The dissatisfaction and disappointment grew. Tesla's challenge was no longer just technical, it was reputational. They had to rebuild trust in the Cybertruck itself and in their ability to deliver functional, reliable vehicles that lived up to the hype. For a company built on innovation and disruption, this required a significant shift in strategy and messaging, from selling a revolutionary dream to fixing a flawed reality. Yet, a core of loyal fans and reservation holders remained hopeful, believing that an updated, more stable version of the truck could still fulfill its potential. While Tesla wrestled with its stainless steel monster, a seemingly unrelated but equally significant crisis was erupting elsewhere. It began quietly, as a routine audit into foreign aid spending, but quickly ballooned into one of the most shocking alleged corruption cases in recent history. The spotlight landed on USAID, the United States Agency for International Development. Every year, USAID manages billions, yes, billions of dollars, channeling aid for everything from healthcare and education to disaster relief across the globe. It's an institution meant to represent American generosity and global partnership, particularly in areas ravaged by poverty or conflict. But federal agents began to suspect something had gone horrifyingly wrong. Evidence emerged suggesting that vast sums, estimated in the tens of billions, had allegedly vanished or been diverted from their intended purposes. Funds earmarked for building schools, supplying hospitals, or feeding vulnerable populations were suspected of being siphoned into private pockets, funneled through shady contracts, or simply wasted on initiatives that provided little to no actual benefit on the ground. This disclosure triggered an immediate, massive investigation. The FBI launched a sweeping probe to trace where the money had gone and who was allegedly responsible. Accusations surfaced, leading to official probes and, shockingly, orders for the apprehension of several senior individuals associated with USAID. Some allegedly attempted to flee the country before they could be taken into custody. Others were already under surveillance when operations began. The probe allegedly uncovered a complex web of mismanagement, glaring oversight failures, and in some disturbing instances, outright fraud. At the core of the allegations were claims that certain USAID personnel, potentially working in concert with private contractors, had devised sophisticated financial schemes to divert massive amounts of cash. These schemes were reportedly disguised as legitimate projects, using falsified or inflated documentation to avoid detection during routine checks. But under closer scrutiny, many projects were found to be either non-existent or had produced almost none of the promised results. One chilling example cited by investigators involved an alleged water access program in a drought-stricken region. Official reports claimed the program had successfully constructed dozens of wells, bringing clean water to thousands. On-site inspections, however, allegedly found only a handful of functional wells, with many listed sites having received no services whatsoever. Millions, allegedly, had simply vanished. News of the alleged scandal ignited a firestorm. American taxpayers, many previously unaware of the sheer scale of U.S. foreign aid, were furious at the thought that billions could have been wasted, or worse, stolen. Politicians across the spectrum demanded immediate transparency and accountability, insisting that every single dollar sent overseas must be rigorously tracked. In response, significant actions were taken. Reports emerged of a temporary suspension of USAID activities and a DBA moratorium on new contracts intended to allow investigators to get a handle on the situation and prevent further alleged abuse. This move, while seen by some as necessary, also sparked intense debate both domestically and internationally regarding its potential impact and political motivations. Regardless of the political fallout, the investigation pressed forward relentlessly. Federal investigators began meticulously tracking financial transactions, digging through years of aid distribution records. Advanced digital tools were crucial in following the money trail across borders and identifying patterns that suggested systemic illicit activity. It became painfully clear that this was not just a few instances of poor accounting, it was potentially a widespread misappropriation of public funds on a shocking scale. The sheer gravity of the situation forced uncomfortable questions about the fundamental way aid programs are managed. Critics argued the system was riddled with basic flaws, giving individuals excessive control over vast sums with insufficient oversight or checks. The bureaucratic layers, they claimed, made it incredibly difficult to detect fraud early, blurring lines of responsibility. Calls for fundamental reform grew louder. Advocates, policy experts, and even some government insiders demanded more transparent systems for tracking funds. Ideas were floated, including using cutting-edge technology like blockchain to create indelible, real-time records of exactly where every dollar flowed, making diversion far harder to conceal and potentially restoring public trust. But while the investigations and political debates raged, the real-world consequences for the communities relying on this aid were immediate and devastating. Projects vital for survival were frozen. Crucial aid deliveries were delayed or halted entirely. In nations struggling with conflict, disease outbreaks, or severe food insecurity, partner organizations were left without funding or answers. A truly painful question hung in the air. Would the very people the aid was meant to help end up suffering the most from the alleged corruption? Meanwhile, the search for those potentially responsible escalated. Some individuals suspected of playing key roles allegedly left the United States, triggering international efforts to locate them. Others reportedly cooperated with investigators, potentially in exchange for lesser penalties. Whistleblower testimonies allegedly shed light on how deep the systemic flaws ran and how long the alleged wrongdoing might have gone unnoticed. The repercussions extended beyond just USAID. Other government agencies involved in international initiatives faced heightened scrutiny. Lawmakers began proposing legislation demanding full, verifiable reporting on all foreign aid spending and increased third-party audits. There was a palpable fear that without significant structural changes, similar alleged scandals were not only possible, but likely. Despite the upheaval, some analysts viewed this as a potential turning point. They argued that genuine reform was achievable, but only if the government was willing to tackle the underlying systemic issues head-on. Better use of technology, significantly more transparent reporting, and expanded involvement from independent. Watchdog groups were cited as potential pathways to a more robust and accountable system. However, it would require more than just a few high-profile apprehensions or temporary suspensions. It demanded a complete reevaluation of how aid is planned, managed, and delivered from the moment the money is allocated to its final impact. On the ground, the long-term objective was a system where every dollar's path could be traced. Results were clearly measured, and those found responsible for failure or fraud faced meaningful consequences. Back in the United States, public interest in both stories remains high. As the USAID probe continues, more names are being reported, more financial documents are allegedly being uncovered, and both current and former individuals associated with the institution face mounting pressure to explain how this scale of alleged abuse could have occurred for so long. The narrative is far from over. What began as a behind-the-scenes audit has become a public reckoning for how America manages its global role. Similarly, the Cybertruck's journey from hyped marvel to recalled problem child is still unfolding. Will Tesla manage to fix its issues and deliver a reliable product? Ultimately, these two seemingly disparate sagas, the futuristic truck facing fundamental flaws, and the international institution grappling with alleged billions gone missing, reveal a troubling common thread: the catastrophic consequences. When grand promises collide with a lack of accountability and transparency, whether it's a revolutionary vehicle meant to change transportation or vital aid intended to save lives, the public expects reliability, integrity, and accountability. The demand for transparency is greater than ever, and the message is clear. Trust, once broken by glaring failures or alleged widespread fraud, is incredibly hard to rebuild. And those in charge face a stark choice: fix the fundamental problems or risk losing that trust entirely.